Great stuff, guys. I used to work a lot in taxation. I don't so much anymore, so I'm really glad ATR and TF are on the chase there. I'm going to talk about the Transportation Security Administration. Heather and Kelly here, they're sort of shoehorning me into the topic tonight. So
I changed my travel plans.
So the Transportation Security Administration is the agency, of course, that runs the airport screening at 450 airports in the United States. So I would say that the TSA taxes our patience and taxes our personal freedom every Thanksgiving and every Christmas. We all hate standing in line to go through those big machines and the bureaucracy at the TSA. So let me give you a real brief history. So the TSA was created in 2001, a couple months after 9/11, and for some of you, and there's some young people in the audience here, you may not know that George W. Bush's first big government action, even before the prescription drugs and before the deficits and before the all his centralizing K-12 education, all those other initiatives, he nationalized airport screening in the United States. Before 9/11, airport screening was decentralized, it was done by the airlines at the airports, and the federal government had an oversight role. So Bush comes in, and the Republicans basically cave to the left-wingers in Congress, and they pass this giant nationalization bill. So today, the TSA is this massive bureaucracy with 60,000 workers. 50,000 of them are unionized. Bush held out against the unionization, but Obama came into office and he's unionized 50,000 workers at the TSA. So I have a new paper out of Cato this week that looks something like this, and you can find it on the Cato website, where I say we ought to privatize the Transportation Security Administration. So let me tell you why. There's four big reasons why, in my view, that TSA sucks and we should privatize it. And we've got a decade of experience now to see how the government bureaucracy works. So first, the TSA has been horribly mismanaged, and there's stories endlessly about the high worker turnover at the TSA, the low employee morale. They have chronic problems of employee theft from passenger baggage. There's all kinds of embarrassing security breaches year after year at the TSA. You get all kinds of well-known people complaining about the TSA. The former TSA head for 5 years under Bush, when he retired, he called the TSA hopelessly bureaucratic. Representative John Micah, who is one of the good guys here, he has tried to reform TSA. He says TSA's got a track record of security failures. It's got a penchant for bungling aviation security and wasting taxpayers' money. It's a bureaucratic nightmare. On and on and on and on. So that's the first problem. The second problem is the TSA's got, just like a lot of government bureaucracies, it does a very poor job of sort of allocating its money and allocating its investment. Unlike a private sector company, it doesn't sort of look out and put money where it could be most efficiently allocated. So the GAO came out with a report last week that said this $250 million program run by the TSA called SPOT is a complete waste of money. I've kind of never seen a GAO report like this. They say, this program doesn't work and Congress ought to stop spending money on it. So this program is called SPOT. There's the TSA has 3,000 undercover agents at airports across the United States, and they're supposed to spot people who look like terrorists and prevent them getting on planes. Well, this doesn't work. There is no science behind it, and GAO's been saying this year after year. There is no scientific basis for this, and so the TSA is basically, looking at someone like Kelly here, who does look like a terrorist, and saying, this guy's a terrorist. But the truth is, he's not a terrorist, and so the TSA makes mistakes like that. So the TSA does this repeatedly. They put a lot of money into things. They don't do any kind of basic cost-benefit analysis. They don't see whether programs work. So that's sort of the second government failing of the TSA. The third failing is its screening performance. Okay, the TSA has all these agents, all these machines these days, and its screening performance is no better than the private screening performance that we had prior to 9/11. And one of the reasons why we know the government screening is no better than private screening is, to the Republicans' credit, they did slip a provision in the original TSA bill that said individual airports in the United States can opt out of government screening if you make this application to the TSA. And there are now 16 airports in the United States. San Francisco is the biggest that actually have private airport screening. And so there's been comparison studies over the years comparing the private screening to the government screening. And these studies basically find either there's no difference or the private screening is better. So that's good. So, occasionally Republicans do the right thing. We have this experience now that private screening is at least as good, if not better, than the government screening. So the fourth, problem with the TSA that comes back closer to home is these civil liberties problems. Americans, of course, have a Fourth Amendment against unreasonable search and seizures by government, and there's all kinds of legal action and complaints by civil libertarians over the years about TSA's overbearing treatment of passengers. And you particularly see these outrageous stories about the way TSA often treats young children or the elderly or people with disabilities. There's been some really appalling stories. The other civil liberties issue I think that's important is there's mission creep at the TSA. The TSA is only supposed to, by statute and regulation, have this narrow focus on aviation security. But there's been a whole series of incidents over the years where the TSA will stop people and start questioning them and pull them off into interrogation rooms, basically, for other sorts of issues. Someone will be traveling, let's say, with a few $1,000s on them. And the TSA will think that's suspicious, so they'll basically interrogate them. Well, that is not the TSA's proper job. Just because you need to go through security at the airport, it doesn't mean you lose all your privacy rights when you travel. So what's the solution to all this? Well, I think the solution is privatization, basically decentralizing the work of the TSA, the airport screening, down to the level of individual airports. That individual airports should contract out competitively to private contractors. And believe it or not, that is how airports in Canada work, and that is how about 80% or more of airports in Europe work. They use private screening. So if you fly in Toronto, you fly into London, you fly into Paris, you will go through machines and personnel who are managed and run by a private security firm. And this system works well. And Europe actually used to have government screening, but during the 1990s and 2000s, more and more European countries moved to private screening because they realized it's more efficient, it works better, and it's just more productive and a better way to do things. So it is odd that, in all these areas, the United States has sort of taken the big government route here. Many other countries have taken a more privatized approach. And so the last comment I make on this, you see this, the aviation industry is really curious in that you have a lot of countries now, Canada, Europe, Australia, who are moving to privatized aviation systems. So to give you an example, Canada's not only got the privatized security screening at its airport, virtually all its airports are private these days, and its air traffic control system is private. These systems work well. Heathrow Airport in London, it's a privately owned airport, private airport screening, and Britain also has privatized air traffic control. These systems work well. It's really sad we're going in the wrong direction here, but hopefully we will look at these international examples and move back in the right direction.
All right.
There we go.
Great. Well, that's kind of the lineup. Does anyone have any questions for any of the panelists?
I would raise two issues, particularly what Scott said, to expand a little bit. I mean, as a libertarian, there are two basic principles of the transportation issue: decentralization and privatization. There's no reason for the federal government to raise all this money with, what is it, 17
18.4%.
If raising money from across the country, it all showers into Washington, goes through a big bureaucracy, Department of Transportation, and is spewed out to all 50 states. It's absolutely crazy. It makes no sense. You should raise money in the state, keep it in the state, build the roads in the state, let's have the states compete. Some can have high taxes and nice shiny new highways, some can have lower taxes and maybe slightly older highways. And I'm all for the user pays principle. That's absolutely the way to go as a libertarian. But there is a difference between government owning the toll roads and private companies owning the toll roads. I'm all in favor of using tolls to pay for new private projects like we've done with the Capital Beltway. That is the way to go. If people want to pay more to use the new private toll road, that's great, because the tolls have to bear some relationship to the cost of building the highway. Unlike with it. And you also, when you've got tolls paying for the government road, you're supporting the union workers who work, in a floated fashion on the toll road. You get around that problem if you privatize the project. So I think that's what you have to. I mean, so user charges are generally good, but I would say user charges is even better if they're used for project.
Other questions?
Scott and Chris, I'd like to go back to tolls. I go up to New York a lot, so I normally have to stop around Philly to take out a loan. But if we're going to Virginia, where we have two opposite cases. You have the Dulles Toll Road, which I think when they were building it, they promised after it paid itself off, they would get rid of the toll. That was, I think, 25 years ago. And it just seems to be going.
They must have not paid it off yet.
No, but
No such thing as temporary tax.
I think now it's increasing every 6 months.
Well, they're using it to pay for the subway line expansion.
Right, well,
Which is just really big.
yeah, there's always something.
Yeah.
But my question was also with the Greenway, right next to it, or continuation of it, privately owned road.
That's right. So the Dulles Greenway was built in the mid-'90s by completely private money. Something like $350 million from private equity firms came in. They built this, I think it was about 15 miles, it was at Leesburg, I guess, right? It's had financial problems over the years because the traffic for a while wasn't as high as it could be. So the investors haven't done great. However, it has survived despite attacks by people like Republican Representative Wolf, as he keeps attacking the highway. He's supposed to be a conservative Republican. And that's amazing that a private financed highway could survive and compete that long, because it's competing against free highways. So the basic problem is, the government's highways are paid for by gas tax, and they're funded, but private highways, the drivers on those highways have to pay for the government's roads to the gas tax too, and yet somehow they're still able to compete. So I'm all for private highways, but we need a way to create sort of fair competition between the private and the
Well,
government.
this was going to be my devil's advocate question,
Yeah.
especially with the Greenway. I hate to use the R word, but how do you regulate the price? Because one of the biggest complaints about the Greenway is it's a short distance, but I think now you're looking at $6.
Right.
Well,
Regulate the
to go 15 miles.
It gets price gets too high, people take alternative routes.
Yep.
If airports are allowed to decide whether they want to go with TSA or private security, why would they choose the TSA?
Say that again. If who?
Airports.
Right. Well, for the last 5 years, it's because the Obama administration has controlled the TSA, and they've been extremely anti this program, which is called FPP, and they've more airports have wanted to go on this program, but it's difficult, and so they have to apply to the TSA, and the TSA have to, check all the boxes, and TSA's got to give their approval, and the Obama administration has basically blocked approvals.
Wait, the TSA has to give approval for
like
to use business and just making sure the incentives are.
And the TSA now is a union. The federal unions lobby against the airports when they want to go private. And there's been surveys of airports asking managers, would you go for the private route with screeners if you could? And a lot of them say yes. And some of the reasons are interesting. I mean, one of the reasons is a lot of airports, not the biggest ones, have seasonal fluctuations, for example, and so they got to adjust their workforces, in the winter season and the summer season. TSA is this centralized bureaucracy. They've got to apply to the TSA to be able to adjust their workforce. The private screening airports have found that they're able to use part-time workers, are able to adjust their workforce a lot better, and they're able to provide better customer satisfaction. The airports know they're competing against roads and trains and other transportation modes, and hopefully, what's happened in the last few years is interesting. So the Obama administration basically blocked further privatization. The Republicans, and I think in the new TSA authorization, I think passed last year, basically slapped down the administration and said that they've got to, if airports meet these criteria, they've got to give approval. So hopefully there'll be more.
Any other questions? All right, I'll do the last one here then. We know what the tax bite is on airplanes. The TSA, I can't handle. Scott. My fiance and I are driving for Thanksgiving to Wisconsin and then Detroit. We get about 26 miles to the gallon. What is the exact amount of oil that I'm going to need to pull
You
out?
told me this morning, I could have done it.
You're a failure. All right, thanks everyone for coming. Check out future events at americasfuture.org, and we'll see you at the next one. Thanks.